Hello students, parents, and teachers. Welcome to the 5 Minutes of History by Teach by Day. I'm Mr. Margot. This is going to be the U.S. History section, and we are going to get started with pre-Columbian natives. So what does that mean? That literally means we're going to talk about the Native Americans before Christopher Columbus showed up and who they were and what they were all about. So, before Christopher Columbus was able to convince the King and Queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella respectively, we ought to talk about the Native Americans and how they existed in the Americas, both North, Central, and South, and how they were able to exist unknown to a lot of the rest of the world and what they were like. First, we're going to start with some of our major civilizations. So we have Olmecs, we have Aztecs, we have Mayans, we have Incas, and we have a large number of groups spread throughout that are sort of minor by comparison. They don't fall into the major civilization category, but what many of them had in common was sophisticated societies. They had sophisticated religious beliefs. They had sophisticated trade networks, especially with the Incas, the Aztecs, and one of the largest civilizations in North America in Cahokia. We also see that they were expressive in art and in music, and one of the ways they passed down information from generation to generation was through the art of storytelling. And this is one of the major common features, whether we're talking about Pacific Northwest, Atlantic Northeast, or Central America like the Aztecs and the Mayans, or South American like the Indians, or even the still native tribes of the Amazon rainforest. They all told stories because for the most part they didn't have a written language much like we saw in the European or Arabic or Chinese parts of the world where they were a lot more defined. They had this way of storytelling to be able to convey not only their history but what they've learned and what they were able to process through their time in the Americas. If you want to know more about those groups, check out our world history videos. They're going to have a lot more depth and information. But for now, we need to get back to the United States. So Christopher Columbus was able to convince King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain that the earth was actually smaller than it really is. And because of that, he believed he could sail west to go east. And because of that, he wanted to find India. He wanted to find a shorter route that would be less expensive to do trading for spices. Unfortunately, he miscalculated, forgot that the Greeks actually figured it out about 1600 years before he even existed. And in reality, when he died, even though he had found what was around the Caribbean islands and the Bahamas, he believed he'd actually found India, which is one of the reasons why many people called the natives of the Americas Indians for such a long period of time. That first group of Native Americans that was able to have contact with him were called the Taínos. The Taínos were really just kind of taken back. They didn't know what to think of these strangers who showed up in wool clothing in the middle of a tropical area, literally starving and exhausted, had been out to sea with almost no water and no food remaining, and death was kind of at the doorstep. The blessing in disguise was these Taínos who probably saved them. They also looked very backward, and of course, because Christopher Columbus wants to embellish what he does and what he sends back to the king and queen, it sets off a chain reaction which then sets all of the rest of Europe, beginning with Spain, but also Portugal, followed by France and Great Britain, in a frenzied race to discover what there is about America and what they can benefit or profit from it. And that is where our driving force begins. Over the next 40 years, we're going to see two Spanish conquistadors actually start going through and making a name for themselves. The first one is going to be in the Middle America region with Hernan Cortez. He's going to take a small group of Spaniards after rumors of hearing of this magnificent civilization with a lot of wealth. And as he finds his way inland to Tenochtitlan, he'll find the Aztec Empire. And when he is riding down the hill, they mistake him for their god Quetzalcoatl, because in their folklore, he believed to be a feathery serpent, or he could appear as this sort of shining object with pale skin. And when Cortez shows up, he's riding on a horse, which Native Americans have never seen before. They're native to Asia. He is also glinting in the sunlight because he is wearing all of his Spanish armor. And then on top of that, he's pale by comparison to the Native Americans of the Aztecs and surrounding natives. So he looks very different than the group of people around him. They give him half of their gold, but that's not enough for Cortez. And because Cortez is a little bit greedy but understands that there is way too many of them at the time they are there, Tenochtitlan is the largest city in the Americas and might have even been one of the largest cities in the world. They don't have the forces to be able to fight that off. So they make their way back to the coast. So as they make their way back about 2 years later, and they find that the people that they once saw aren't quite as large as they used to be. He believes that they saw the writing on the wall and they left. In reality, it was the tiny microscopic killer called smallpox. And smallpox begins to devastate the Native American population well before many Europeans even make it to some of the other regions. Because Europeans and Africans and people of Asia, they already had immunity to it because they'd been exposed to smallpox millennia before that. The natives hadn't. And so when they made trades, especially with the Tejanos and early peoples in the Mayan or Olmec and early Aztec areas, they traded wool blankets that actually had smallpox in them. And because of that, the disease spread very rapidly. Hearing of the fame of Cortez, another conquistador named Francisco Pizarro now really wanted to make a name for himself. And because of this, he decided that not only would he do this, but he'd do it a little differently, and he would go to South. So South America becomes his goal, to find this massive group of people. And after a little while of searching, he finds some rumors of a rich civilization in the south, and he runs into the Incas. And the Incas are willing to trade, but all too quickly that evaporates, as they don't really seem to trust the Spanish much like the Aztecs did. They didn't confuse them for their gods. What we end up seeing is a battle that sort of takes place where the Spanish take the Inca leader captive and they hold him hostage for a room filled of gold and silver, and the Inca comply with this, giving back their leader. But now he looks weak, and so there's a bit of a power struggle going on with the Incas. So when the Spanish return after getting all of that gold and silver back to the shore where they could ship it back to Spain, they've come back again, like Cortez did, looking for the rest of the gold and silver. This time the Inca are ready, but they've also been ravaged by the same disease the Aztecs were hit with, smallpox. Smallpox here really does the most devastation, and throughout that, we see that there's not a lot that they're able to do, and over time, the Spaniards once again are able to just kind of exhaust the resources of the natives, and they're able to win. The success of Pizarro and Cortez set off a absolute frenzy of people who are looking for Cibola. Cibola was supposed to be the city made of gold, and it was going to be in the north because the north had some little bit differences in temperatures, but it just never materialized. The largest Native American civilization to date that has been found in the north is Cahokia. We see French and English traders show up, and people looking to make money, they find a way to make money differently, and they looked at the Spanish encomiendas where they were producing goods like sugarcane. The English start producing similar things, although sugarcane doesn't grow as well where they establish. We'll check that out in a different video. And the French can't really grow things where they first start exploring, but they do find money in furs. And now we see where everybody is a little bit more economically motivated in the New World. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe, look for our new posts on the next videos, and join us weekly as we follow through history 5 minutes at a time. Thanks for watching.